to the Explainer, where we take complex topics and, well, make them simple. Today, we're cracking the code on some of the real magic inside SAP's material management, how it automatically figures out all the accounting behind the scenes. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the main puzzle we're trying to solve. Then we'll break down the two key building blocks, transaction keys and value strings. After that, we'll see how they work with a couple of real-world examples, and we'll finish up with an absolute must-know pro tip for making sure your setup is perfect. Okay, let's just dive right in. You know, at the heart of any smooth-running supply chain is a system that just works. Things happen, and the system just handles it. No drama, no constant manual work. I mean, really think about that for a second. A physical thing happens out in the real world. A truck arrives, a box is scanned, and instantly the company's financial books are perfectly updated. There's no accountant sitting there keying in debits and credits. So how does it happen? That's the big question, and the answer is actually pretty amazing. So to get how this magic trick works, we first have to learn the language this system speaks. And the very first piece of that language, the first part of the puzzle, is something called a transaction key. So what are these things? Well, think of them like little labels or shorthand codes for any financial action that can happen. Instead of telling SAP, hey, post to account number 400100, you just tell it, hey, do a stock posting. The system knows that action has a label, and that label is BSX. It's way more flexible. All right, so here are some of the most common keys you're going to run into every day in material management. Now, don't worry about memorizing this whole list, but I want you to pay close attention to the first two, BSX and WRX. These two are the dynamic duo. They're involved in almost every standard goods receipt, one for the inventory and one for the financial clearing. We're going to see them again in just a minute. So if those transaction keys we just talked about are our individual ingredients, you know, like flour, sugar, eggs, then the value string, well, that's the recipe. It tells the system which ingredients to use and in what order for any specific movement of goods. And this right here, this is the big aha moment. When a goods receipt happens, SAP doesn't go looking directly for a specific financial account, what we call a general ledger or GL account. Nope. Instead, it finds the pre-assigned recipe, the value string, and that recipe tells it which posting rules, which transaction keys it needs to use for this exact situation. And this just lays it all out, step by step. It's a beautiful chain of logic, right? A user does something simple. The system sees what kind of movement it is, finds the right recipe, reads the list of ingredients, and only at the very end does it look at your company's specific settings to find the actual account numbers. Okay, theory is great, but let's see this thing in action. Let's walk through the most common scenario there is, a standard goods receipt. This happens thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of times a day at any big company. So picture this. A truck pulls up to your warehouse to deliver something you ordered. The warehouse clerk takes out their scanner, zaps the barcode, and confirms the receipt. In that single moment, SAP kicks off a specific recipe, a value string, designed for this exact event. For a standard receipt against a purchase order, that recipe is called WE01. So that WE01 recipe, it has two simple steps. First, it uses our old friend, the BSX key, to make a debit posting, which increases the value of your stock. Then, it uses the WRX key to make the offsetting credit posting to a special temporary account called the GR/IR, or Goods Receipt/Invoice Receipt Clearing Account. That account just sits there, waiting for the invoice to arrive from the supplier. It's clean, it's balanced, and it's totally automatic. All right, that was the easy one. Now let's throw a curveball at the system. What happens when goods show up, but they're free? Maybe a supplier sent you a sample, no charge. This is where the logic gets really, really cool. For this kind of delivery, the system pulls out a different recipe book. It uses a value string called WA14. But here's the catch. Unlike our simple goods receipt, what WA14 does depends completely on how that material is valued in your system in the first place. I mean, check this out. This is fascinating. On the one hand, if your material's price just averages out over time, the system says, hey, it's free, so its value is 0. No accounting happens at all. But on the other hand, if that material has a fixed standard price, the system says, I don't care that it was free. I know what this stuff is supposed to be worth, and it creates a full accounting document, debiting your stock and crediting a price difference account. It's the same physical action, but with totally different financial results. Okay, so if you're a real SAP detective and you go digging around in the configuration for that WA14 value string, you might see something weird. You might see the transaction key for stock, BSX, listed twice. Why on earth would it do that? Well, this quote from SAP's own documentation gives us the clue, and it leads us down a very interesting rabbit hole. This rabbit hole gets deep, but stick with me. This only happens in a super specific but important scenario. It happens when you have to post that free delivery into a previous accounting period, like you're backdating it to last month. And, crucially, the standard price for that material was different last month than it is today. And to keep the accountants happy, the system does something just brilliant. It actually creates two separate documents. First, it posts the document back in the previous period, recording the stock at its old value. Then it posts a second document in the current period to adjust the stock's value up to the new current price. And that is why the BSX key, the stock posting key, shows up twice in the recipe. It's there once for each of those stock postings. Pretty clever, right? So after seeing all of that complexity, you might be thinking, whoa, that's a lot of ways for things to go wrong. How can I ever be sure my configuration is right before I flip the switch and potentially cause a huge accounting mess? Well, the good news is you don't have to just cross your fingers and hope for the best. SAP gives you a fantastic tool built right into the configuration, designed for this exact purpose. This simulation tool is your best friend. Seriously, it's like a flight simulator for your accounting setup. It lets you test any material, any movement, any crazy scenario you can think of, and it will show you the exact GL accounts it will post to, all without touching your live financial data. It is an absolutely essential tool. And here's a little pro tip for you, something a lot of people miss. Inside that simulation tool, there's a button called Check Screen Layout. With one click, it will compare the settings for your movement type against the GL accounts it's trying to post to, and it will warn you about potential field mismatches that could cause errors later. It's an incredible time saver. So what's the bottom line here? It's simple. Always, always simulate. Make this a non-negotiable part of your process. You test, you verify, and then, and only then, do you move your changes to the live system with total confidence. And there you have it. We started with the puzzle of automatic postings and discovered the elegant two-part answer. Transaction keys, which are the actions, and value strings, which are the recipes that combine them. We saw how it all works in both simple and, well, not so simple scenarios, and we finished with the P tool you need to verify it all. The logic is unlocked. So my question to you is, what's the first thing you're going to go check in your own system? Thanks for joining us.
Ever wonder how an